Hey guys, Keith Archer with Ultimate Egg Cure, Ultimate Shrimp Cure High Octane, and Ultimate Shrimp Cure. I'm back today. It's November 2025. I haven't done anything in a bit, and I wanted to bring to you a couple different things with egg curing. Okay, we've talked about egg curing in the past. I did a video last year. It's the main video on the page here, the Ultimate Shrimp Cure YouTube channel. If you haven't yet, subscribe. Obviously, there's lots of different videos that I've done, different things in regards to coon shrimp, eggs, all this, giving you an opportunity to follow along and create your own products. So I want to talk a little bit today about brining eggs with the Ultimate Egg Cure and then curing eggs with the Ultimate Egg Cure with a special additive, okay? Let's talk a little bit about the brining eggs with the Ultimate Egg Cure. This is a super simple process. A lot of guys want to find the easiest way to cure eggs. Although I don't brine a lot of eggs myself personally, I find myself to use the video that we previously done in 2024 to be the most common way that I cure eggs personally. I wanted to talk a little about brining themselves. So let's talk about the product itself, the salmon eggs, okay? Extremely important that we get these eggs out of the fish immediately. And that means the afternoon of, you come to the end of the day, you come to the boat ramp, let's get the eggs out of the fish. Let's get them in a Ziploc bag, get them home, and let's get them cured, okay? I think one of the big things that I see most people do is they will put their eggs in the refrigerator, and then a day later, 2 days later, come around to deciding to cure those eggs. And to me, that's a big no-no, okay? Your eggs are gonna be even more compromised if they sit too long in the refrigerator. The longer that they sit out of the fish in a plastic bag, wherever you choose to store them at, the longer they sit out of the fish, the more compromised they're going to become, okay? There's bacteria, those sort of things working against the actual membrane of the egg itself, and we just want to get them cured as quick as possible. So ideally, inside 12 hours out of the fish, we're going to put them into the curing process. So how do we do that? Let's talk about the brine, okay? I'm not going to do a full walkthrough on the brine, but I'm just going to give you a quick understanding of the brine and the expectation of the product, okay? So earlier, I brined up 1 hour ago. I brined up, okay? I took 2 quarts of water. I took 4 Chinook eggs, 4 Chinook skeins, sorry. 3/4 of a cup of Ultimate Egg Cure, okay? I added, 2 quarts of water, 3/4 of a cup of the Ultimate Egg Cure, and mixed it up well, okay? I let it sit for 10, 15 minutes to dissolve. I came back, I added my salmon eggs, okay? And when I add my salmon eggs, the first thing I do is I take the skein, like so, okay? I check for blood, all right? I got a little bit of blood here, so I'm gonna go through and I'll just kind of work that blood out with the tip of the scissors themselves, and I can just kind of work them up this main vein line. You can see me kind of working the blood towards this main vein, okay? And then I'll kind of work it down, work it down, work it down, and then I'll just kind of bring it on up and out, okay? Towards the end, just kind of wipe the blood off. This one really wasn't that bloody of an egg to start with. I think your bloody eggs often come from the situation where you beat the fish too hard when you land it. It stuns them, or it really stuns the internal organs, and it dumps the blood into the eggs. So you want to be careful. A lot of times I just find if you just tap them on the back of the head, throw them in the bleed bucket or the fish box, cut their gills, let them bleed out, let them do that sort of thing, and you'll often find you'll have much more cleaner eggs to start with, okay? So big skein here, okay, out of a big Chinook. I think it's, me personally, if I had to pick, a lot of people ask, Keith, what do you prefer as far as a species of eggs, okay? I would definitely take a king egg over any other species themselves. Main reason, they have the most dense membrane through the middle of the skein, okay, as well as the external parts of the skein. So they're more versatile, okay? You can use them for back bouncing, hover fishing, drift fishing, side drifting, bobber fishing, all the tactics. I've found them to be more versatile, more rigid, more capable, right? The end product itself is always firmer, just overall better quality. So if I had a choice, I'd pick Chinook eggs, followed by coho, followed by sockeye, followed by chum, and then steelhead kind of probably in the mix. Butterflying the eggs, okay? I see people cure skeins in the entire skein itself. I don't quite understand that, because when you reach in and you try to get into the middle of these skeins, there's some density in here where the product can't get in. Like, it's near impossible for the product or the chemicals to get in there to cure the egg properly. So one of the things I do is I'll start on the end of a skein and I'll work up the middle and I'm butterflying it, okay? So I just work right down the middle, and you can see the skein already starting to open up. Okay, and just be careful when you're cutting. You notice I'm using children's scissors. The reason I do that is they're extremely dull and they don't pop any of the eggs. Learned that by accident when I borrowed a pair of my kids' scissors. So we have 2 pieces now, butterflied out, like so, okay? Now I'm gonna take those and I'm gonna show you my cure process, right? We talked a little bit about the brine process. We're gonna go to my cure process now. Move the shrimp cure out of the way. I use gallon jars themselves. I've always been an advocate for gallon jars. People use Ziploc bags. There's no issues with gallon Ziploc bags. I just like to never fill the bag or the jar more than, you know, just over halfway, because you've got to be able to shake them like so. Here's some eggs that I just recently cured up. Okay, but you got to be able to turn them to get those chemicals to disperse through the eggs as they dissolve. Okay, because it's really important. Sometimes people just toss the cure on. They don't really shake them up well. They throw them in the refrigerator and they get blotchy spots where some of the eggs are cured, some of the eggs are not cured. That's not what we want. We want all those chemicals to dissolve so that they can work their way through the entire skeins, okay? So first things I'll do is I'll add about 1/2 ounce, okay? And this is all by eyeball for me, but you can measure if you like, 1/2 to 3/4 ounce in the bottom of the jar, all right? When we do this inside, it's really important to be careful because the powder in the Ultimate Egg Cure is extremely fine. And the reason it's so fine is I like it to dissolve immediately, okay? So I want that stuff to be working immediately as it comes into contact versus some of the bigger crystals and bigger things that people use in some of the other cures on the market. So I'll toss a lid on always to kind of prevent those fumes from getting, you know, dyes and chemicals on countertops and places like that, because it does stain, and it stains very, very easily. So careful on that one. All right, we've got one side of the butterfly, and I'm just gonna work right across, and I'll cut 3-4 inch long pieces, okay? And I did 3 pieces for that side. Now I've got this side here butterflied. I'm gonna do the same thing, just work across, try to cut between the membranes, and then you get the chunks. So I've got 3, 4 coming out of that side, okay? I'm gonna toss another 3/4 ounce of egg cure. Now let's talk about what we do and how much we use, okay? On an immature egg, I'll use around 1/2 ounce of cure, okay? There's 14 ounces in a bottle, so I'll use about 1/2 ounce of cure for an immature egg. What's an immature egg? That's, you know, that's your eggs that are a lot shorter skeins, 6, 7, 8 inches long, a lot tighter berries, you know, smaller than a BB, the berries are. As the egg size increases, this is your mid-level egg, medium berry. I'll run somewhere between 1/2 and 3/4 ounce of cure per pound of eggs, okay? So when I do that and I'm curing, I'll do a layer of cure on the bottom of the jar or in the bag, a layer of eggs, a couple inches deep, 2-3 inches deep, a layer of cure, somewhere around 3/4 ounce, another 2-3 inches of eggs, and then work my way up to where, again, I'm about 3/4 way full max so that I can utilize the jar itself, okay, to mix the eggs, right? So we'll come back to this and mix this in a second. Let's go through this second skein, all right? We're gonna look at the blood level real quick. On the side of the skein here, you can see there's some blood. I'm just gonna work that out. Side of the scissors, just gonna work against it like so. See how I'm rubbing it down the edge? And it's kind of hard to see, but that blood just works itself right out real easily. I'll just kind of dab that blood off there. You can see that there was some blood coming out of both those skeins, okay? Now I'll take this skein, I'll flip it around. Largest end in the back side of my hand here. Start butterflying my way up. Like so. And this one I'm not gonna butterfly completely. I'm just gonna hang it over my jar. I'm gonna cut my 3-4 inch pieces that have been butterflied. Okay, so now I'm gonna go right up the middle, like so. Okay, and then crossed. I'm gonna add 3/4 more ounce of cure. not quite 3/4, just a little under, because that wasn't quite a full pound of eggs. Again, I didn't measure that. That's just from experience and time, okay? So I've got a layer of cure, 2 or 3 inches of eggs, a layer of cure, 2 or 3 inches of eggs, a layer of cure, okay? I want to talk a little bit about what the idea was when we designed this egg cure, okay? When the egg cure was designed, I came to the conclusion that the curing time and length was super important. I noticed that if I cured 1, 2, 3 days, it made a phenomenal product, an absolutely beautiful product, a product that turned out like so, okay? As you can see, these are some of the most vibrant, brightest, most tacky, beautiful eggs that you'll put your hands on as far as a finished product. But one of the things I came to realization is when I cured 1, 2, 3 days, they worked well, okay? But incidentally, over time, I figured out that dispersion was one of the key factors. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to create an alcohol in the egg. So in the ingredients and such, okay, I've got the necessary ingredients to where a fermentation process starts in the eggs, okay? So I'll cure personally 5 to 11 days, depending on the maturity egg. The least mature egg, I'll cure somewhere between 4, 5, 6 days. The medium buried egg, I'll cure, 5 to 9, and then the larger buried egg, a little bit bigger than these berries, I'll go, 6 to 10, 6 to 11 days. Now there's nothing that really tells me that the curing process is done, other than you'll start to smell kind of it's not rancid as in rotten, but it's kind of a sharp pungent smell. And what that is the egg cure, the fermentation process, everything is happening and starts to produce what's called lactic acid. Okay, lactic acid in layman's terms is sort of the fermentation process creating an ethyl alcohol, right? So the ethyl alcohol that's created in the egg reduces the lipids and proteins, okay? So molecularly it reduces them, breaks them down to where they can disperse through the water column quicker, okay? Because there's more parts per million, if that makes sense. They disperse through the water column quicker, infiltrating their nose, leaving a larger scent trail, okay, to draw the salmon in to where they're going to pay attention to those eggs and feed on those eggs and want those eggs more, okay? So how can we expedite the process? It's pretty simple, okay? The process can be expedited by adding Captain Morgan's, Black Velvet, Crown Royal, any sort of sugar-based rum has been my experience, okay? So anything with a mid-proof, 80, 90, 100 proof, somewhere in that area. I don't like things that are too high a proof, Everclears or those sort of things, because they're too much alcohol. And if you put too much in, it can actually compromise the egg, right? So what I'll do is for about every, 2 pounds of eggs, I'll put in a capful, which is, a couple teaspoons maybe, like so. I'm gonna do about another half, okay? That's added in. I toss my lid on, okay? And then I give them a good shake. And I'm just rolling them around. Now, if these are in a Ziploc bag, obviously we'd seal the bag, leave a little air space in there, roll them around, set them out on the kitchen counter. I'll give them 10, 15, 20 minutes to kind of let the chemicals dissolve. These have been cured for about 30 minutes. You can see there's a lot more juice starting to expose itself. That's the chemicals working with the eggs, creating that layer of juice, pulling it out of the eggs. Now we can kind of shake these, once an hour, first couple hours, and then I'll place them in the refrigerator. The next morning, I'm gonna shake them again, 12 hours later. I'm gonna shake them up, just kind of that same sort of thing, whether they're in the bag, shake them up. That first 2, 3 days, I'm gonna give them a decent little shake or in the jar. And I want those to be evenly dispersed. Those chemicals, working the juices out, I want those to be evenly dispersed. You'll notice after 18 to 24 hours that you're gonna see a lot of liquid building up in the base of the bag or in the base of the jar. And then at about that 24-hour mark, it's gonna suck all that juice back into the egg, okay? So they're gonna be like really plump, really firm. They're gonna look a lot like these do, okay? Just really plump, really firm eggs. And then they're gonna kind of start to dump those juices back out again, all right? And that's what we want that to happen. That's a normal part of the process. And that's going to happen between, you know, day 2 and day 5. They're going to kind of juice back out, and then they're going to again reabsorb juices, you know, day 4, 5, 6. And then on that second time that they dump juices back out, that day 6 through a 10, that sort of thing, depending on the maturity of the egg, that's when I decide to freeze them. So how do I freeze them? What do I do? Okay, I'll take them from these bigger jars and I'll place them in either pint jars or quart jars. Okay, and when I place them in those jars, I'll just take the jar itself, I'll kind of massage the eggs into the outside edges of the jar, okay, to where I'm kind of removing as much oxygen as I possibly can from the jars, so that's going to prevent freezer burn. Freezer burn, oxygen is really the only thing that is the demise of the egg over a long period of time when they're sitting in their freezer. At times you'll notice the residual juices left in the bottom of the jar, bottom of the bag. When I'm packing them away in the pint jars or the quart jars, I will dump that residual juice back into the jars, because those do fill the air pockets, fill the voids, and prevent them, that oxygen from you know, creating the freezer burn. So, all right, brining, okay? You can see here a little different one. These are eggs that I brined, okay, earlier today. That was a 1-hour process. Now I've taken them and I've set them out, pulled them out of the cure, okay? I've set them on paper towels on a cookie sheet. And what I'll do is I'll wrap these, okay, with saran wrap. I'll wrap around this way, around. I'll poke a few holes in the top, just allow a little bit of oxygen in. But what I've found is if I lay them out on cookie sheets and I give them direct air, sometimes they get a little too gummy, if that makes sense. And I don't want them to be ultra gummy. I want them to be firm and rigid and kind of still have that juice pocket in each one of the skeins. So when I pinch these skeins, I'll be careful here not to get this, but you can, well, you can see how firm they are, right, already. They're a really firm egg. I can really squeeze those, okay? And if I squeeze hard enough, they pop. Look at that juice, okay? The juice is like a syrup. I love the fact that they turn into kind of a syrup and rather than a gel, okay? Because the syrup is gonna leak and leach through that water column, allowing that dispersion process to kind of happen. When you're doing the brine, you can add a couple capfuls, depending on how much eggs you're doing. You know, if you're doing 2-3 pounds of eggs, do a couple capfuls of the Captain Morgan's in the brine process. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. All right, that's going to help add a little alcohol to the egg, which will help in that dispersion process. All right, but remember, the brine itself, 1 hour, plenty of time. Pull them out, lay them on paper towels, air dry them overnight. Only overnight if you wrap them with saran wrap, okay? And the next day, pack them in your jars, freeze them, all right? Super simple process. Again, this dude here, these are the standard way. We're gonna run those 5 to 7, 5 to 8 days, and then I'll pack those in jars. So if you guys have questions in the comment section, feel free to ask as many questions you want. As you could see on last year's video with the 15,000 views, we've got lots of questions and answers on that. But yeah, subscribe, follow along. I'm here to help. Fill them freezers. Talk soon.